knowledge as needed, but you can't teach some of those softer skills as quickly as we needed them to be done. And so at times it meant if you've got the wrong person out there because of our facilitatory role engaging, then things are going to implode quite quickly.
Because we're all built on trust. It's all trust. And so if we have the wrong person at the coalface representing the organisation, and people are not trusting them, then that's
so these relational skills and trust that flows from it. Absolutely. It sounds I'm hearing here that's critical. And
which is what the cultural fit that we're recruiting for.
So now you're explicitly recruiting for that as well as
and it hasn't been easy in that it is a change for HR practices, and it has meant, I guess, a bit of advocacy work at this level to really articulate those things, because when you write it into a PD, it doesn't sound as clear cut, or it's hard to convey to ensure that the people out there know what the role is. But we've had to really ensure that we push to that rather than taking the easy option of pulling a standard program manager PD off the web, because if it falls over, it's really...
So has it been a bit of a chore to change your HR practices? Has that been an easy task to support this kind of focus in your recruitment and your talent?
I've always probably... I think, I'm in education, so it's a little different, but I've always recruited for cultural fit, because I think you can really teach anybody anything, and provided obviously they've got some baseline skills.
But I'm asking about the actual human resource practices that govern recruitment, selection.
I think it has been a chore to try and advocate and push for what we can see is so critically important, and I think it's been partly hampered by our HR staffing back then and evolution to now. So
we've had a
HR staffing being the people in the HR team.
It's a team of one, and it was a very fractional appointment.
So I think what I'm hearing here is that there's been a bit of a process of realigning the kind of modus operandi of the HR unit or team or person
to our new way of working. And even to the point where our performance plan and performance conversations are all values-based.
Okay.
So, we frame, rather than going, yes, you've ticked off all these tasks for this quarter, we frame it around... have you been collaborative? Have you done, give me a demonstration.
So that's now explicitly featured in the
very
performance
explicit,
management
And when it wasn't, there was a real tension amongst staff, because it was, I'm struggling to articulate the value I bring because you're trying to ask me to put it into hard deliverables, and I guess in our perspective, that's, if you're not doing your work, that should be called out at any point in time. The performance process is really to articulate some of these other elements to demonstrate, your competence in your role, and it's not, did you deliver that report or did you do that? And so we're evolving in that space to allow better...
And I think, you're right, that's been an absolutely...
It has.
Unbelievable change over the last, again, as someone from the olden days, we were very much only measured on these kind of tick box things. Did you put in this, as your project management plan, have you got that document and that document and that document in place? And it was all very black and white and rigid. And I think, to shift to that values-based, has actually, again, been an enormous cultural change internally.
And you probably had quite tangible tasks back then. Now we work in so much shades of grey, I think, now, because we're building relationships and all these other things. It'd be hard to measure it.
The tension where I found it was, with the research and education lead program and the support roles for these leads, where again, I had program managers being asked for reports and being measured in their, ability to deliver a report, and actually, their true role was building relationships.
So if
and there was no way of measuring that, and I think, the thing, I guess...
Building relationships out across the environment.
Absolutely. Whereas, I guess the way I put it, you know, when our new HR came in was because, you know, we had this very well-structured project management framework, but it didn't include any quality measures.
No.
So it was all about just, you know, is this delivered on time and on budget? And for the sort of organisation we are, you know, as a framework for the way that we worked, it wasn't a good fit because, you know, you could you could chuck in a report and, you know, no one will ever read it. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't change anything. Or you could, you know, work with people and construct a report that, you know, is one of those game changers that's a catalyst for the next thing to happen. And there was no way of capturing that in people's performance. So that's been an enormous change to that values-based HR that, you know, as I say, this is still very new for us. We're in that...
Yeah, so it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
I think I'm also hearing that from a job design point of view, you know, this ability to work across, you know, formal job boundaries is also critical. The ability to engage with colleagues across areas of specialisation.
So I suppose that was something else that we had, you know, back in the olden days was this kind of, you know, we had these portfolios of, you know, research, clinical trials and education, and it was like, well, you're accountable for the things that sit under you, and that's that, you know. So one of the things I guess I tried to do first when Michelle came on, Steph came on, and then Anne, who's our clinical trials head, came on, is to sort of introduce that concept of how we, you know, work in the... us as heads work in the white space, so, you know, we try and work across, and we actually did it, we made it very explicit when we did the strategic research plan, which we don't have a copy of, but we made it very visible. There's this kind of colour-coded bar up the top of each one that kind of says, well, you know, this program, you know, has X% contribution from research, X% contribution from education, and X%. And we weighted them for each program, but, you know, for example, clinical trials, while that seems quite, you know, prescribed, there's an enormous education component to clinical trials because the barriers in the workforce out there are actually that there isn't enough skilled workforce to do all the clinical trials that need to be done. So Anne, as a clinical trials manager, couldn't possibly be successful unless she had Michelle's expertise. You know, there are aspects of clinical trials which, let's face it, are research, which, you know, Anne knows that bit of clinical trials, but not, you know, that bit. So, you know, she and I work together really closely. So it's actually been, again, something that I've really... well, I feel like I've been banging on about it for years, important. But, you know, we're now again starting to surface it. That,
it's almost an agile management approach.
That at our heads level, we need to be able to work across the portfolio boundaries. Yes, we need certainty for the program managers, you know, and they need clear reporting lines and all those sorts of things. But our portfolios shouldn't be barriers to the way we work, because, again, the type of work is not supported by us creating more internal silos. You know, given we're supposed to be a silo-busting organisation, we have to very explicitly work towards not creating our own.
And could I just say, I know you've got to move on with the questions, but one thing that's really...
We are the first one. I don't think we've moved
No, we're moving through.
We are good.
We are moving through.
One of the things, coming back to that, why for this piece of work, because we are an alliance organisation, and we talk about our role, which we sit in here, but it's all about reaching out. I just think back to, you know, that internal processes like our performance management process and how we measure our staffing value. It seems a little bit short-sighted that we're just focusing inward on like traditional organisations, which is have we delivered this or so on. We need to do that with our teams, you know, to make sure things are on track.
Yeah.
But surely as an alliance organisation, we should be thinking about how we measure our value of our performance based on those who we engage with. So, you know, I know it will be complex. There's lots of engagement. So the R&E lead one is a perfect example of our program managers. So if I was a program manager, I have maybe 3 leads I'm supporting. So they're those tumour stream heads. And so most of my